Dr. Colonel Josh McConkey. What an unbelievable life he has led. He has written a new book called The Weight Behind the Spear. It is targeted at young people who do not enjoy the services of that we did when we were kids. Is that a fair statement?
They've definitely encountered some very new challenges with social media. It's had a lot of detrimental effects on their development for sure.
But when we were talking before you came on, you were saying that we uh, during COVID we took people out of school, out of
Uh,
church, out of community, and that it's really had a devastating impact on a legion of young people.
an entire generation.
Have they come back from that?
No, and it's the social issues, the anxiety, the depression, and I've seen a lot of suicide. So the mental health crisis is very real, and it's a direct result from those policy decisions.
That is so sad. What is the antidote? How do we reclaim the past for young people?
We have to get involved. And the best resource in this country, it's people. It's teachers, coaches, volunteers, and families. That's what sets us apart. That's what makes us America. That's what has always made us America for almost 250 years. No amount of social media is going to change that. So we have to get face to face with these kids, coaching, teaching, getting them into volunteer, getting them into different organizations. I need people to step up and engage their communities, and that's my whole ethos of be the weight behind the spear.
So let's detour for a moment and take us through uh, just a 30,000 foot view of your life. Yeah, I mean, we were talking before we started the interview about the journey that you have been on. It is a phenomenal story of family and service. Tell our listeners about it.
Well, I grew up in a very rural town, small town, less than 8,000 people, more cows, than people where I grew up,
Where
and
was that?
just Lyons, Nebraska, a very small town.
No, wow, great.
And came from a family of railroaders, an entire lineage. So my great grandfather, my grandfather, and my father, all railroaders. Milwaukee Railroad, and then they went bankrupt in the '80s. My dad got on with the Burlington Northern Railroad and was moved out to western Nebraska. So just grew up around a lot of blue collar, hardworking people. Was in athletics. I was a wrestler, which is a great sport to teach accountability, that personal accountability. And went to a college, Chadron State College, small school. If you follow football, if you know who Danny Woodhead is, or Don Beebe, receiver for the Bills, do you follow football much?
I really am not a football guy. I have to be honest.
And most football fans will recognize those two names.
I can talk politics with you, but football, I'm challenged. My
Yeah,
my sons can hang with you though.
yeah, there you go. So Danny Woodhead, two-time Harlan Hill Trophy winner. That's the Heisman for Division II. So
Hmm.
he's probably the most famous coming out of Chadron State. And from there, went to medical school and took a direct commission into the Army, in the Army Guard. I had an ROTC scholarship, but Chadron State was too small of a school and they did not have a program. So I took that direct commission in 2000. And then we all know what happened in September of 2001. 9/11 kicked off and the world changed completely. And we've basically been at war my entire military career. So, it's seen some death and destruction. I served in Iraq in 2007 and needed
Were,
some
were
time to
you a doctor?
decompress as an
And
emergency physician. So I flew medevac. I was medical director for three air ambulance companies. It was one support, general support aviation battalion out of Balad, Bakuba, a few different locations. Al Assad, it was quite busy and very active. It was part of the surge in 2007 when President Bush called up those additional troops. That was me. So, I carried those body bags and took care of those men and women that were laying down their lives. It changed me a lot as a person. And so when I came back to the States, I moved overseas to New Zealand and practiced as a physician in Rotorua, New Zealand, got remarried. My son was born down there. We've been very blessed. I've got three kids now and had a lot of life changes since, but got back into the military and the Air Force Reserves, have served as a critical care air transport doctor, as an aerospace medicine, a flight surgeon, and just finished a command tour at Andrews Air Force Base.
My gosh. And what a wonderful life that you have led. And it sounds like one largely grounded in service. Um, can I ask you how did it make you feel after you learned that you had been serving in Iraq and that the whole premise was based on basically a lie?
Yeah, I was watching that. You know, there wasn't like just a definitive like boom, this is where we knew it was a lie. But I remember very distinctly in 2011, I was with my brother-in-law, Andrew. So he served in Iraq as well. My wife's brother, and he served with the combat engineers and saw a lot of death and destruction as well. We were on vacation in Florida, and we were sitting there watching live on CNN in 2011 when Obama made that decision to just pull all the troops out of Iraq. And we watched those last trucks and convoys literally exit Iraq. And we just sat there and chatted with each other. And we saw so many, men and women die for this country. And you ask yourself, like, what was the point? Like,
To what end?
why were we actually there? And I know I was there for the men and women that were serving, and I wanted them to have the best medical care, regardless of the politics, regardless of why we were there. We're there, and I want those men and women to be taken care of and have that best health care. And that's something I take a lot of pride in. I know Andrew was there for the men that he served with, and he saw a lot of his friends die. It was very hard. So you just ask yourself, and you see some continual policy failures from government leaders, spanning multiple, presidential cycles, and just even the politics aside, it just you're a little bit bitter, but it's what's really motivated me to get involved in politics myself. We need to have some educated, competent, purpose-driven leaders in this country, and I'm going to be a part of that. So we're entering the lieutenant governor race here in North Carolina.
Oh, congratulations! And what party are you affiliated with, if I may
So
ask?
Republican Party, I'm a rural, small town kid, very more conservative values. So that's
Okay, good. Well, we can continue the interview then.
uh,
Well, I think that is a very noble calling. I too have run for public office. I relished it. I did not win. Hopefully, your experience will be different than mine. But I do think it is a noble calling. And one of the benefits that I found from running for office is that it really exposed me to the goodness of humanity. And I knocked on thousands of doors, and people welcomed me into their home. They spoke to me openly and transparently about the challenges that they had in their lives and things they had been through. And I really walked away from the experience learning just how much goodness there really is in the world. And the mainstream media just doesn't tell you that. They just tell you what's wrong with it.
what race did you run for?
Well, I ran for the state senate in
Oh,
Atlanta. Um, we made a decent showing. We got 42 or 3% of the vote in the primary, and then I ran for Attorney General of Georgia with President Trump's endorsement
oh
in
wow, great
2022.
race.
And in both cases, I just got in way too late. I have fought procrastination my entire life. Actually, in the AG race, I really did start. I started early enough. I sent out feelers to a number of people who I knew and respected, and they all said, "Oh, that's a great idea. Yes, definitely, you should do that. Let me make some calls and I'll get back to you." And then the phone never rang, and I said, "Well,
I've got
I
a
guess I just decided it wasn't a good idea."
Yeah,
And then,
I ran a congressional race last year, like 2023, 2024, and got outspent by $12 million. So like we're getting involved. This is a race for 2028 right now in North Carolina. So we're jumping in now, and we're going to leave no doubt as we come through this, who that top candidate's going to be for the
who
primary.
spent
So
$12 million?
yeah, I was outspent by 12
You were
million in that
outspent by
congressional
12. And
race.
what did you spend?
Oh, it's about 600, 650. And
Yeah.
it was a bizarre race where there was just a really wealthy individual that wanted to anoint his daughter as a congresswoman. He spent $12 million. She got to the runoff against Brad Knott, our current congressman, and then she just wasn't a great candidate. So she got to the runoff. Trump got involved and endorsed Brad Knott, and then she just quit
That's unfortunate
after
for her
$12 million. Unbelievable.
That's very unfortunate for her dad.
Yeah, yeah, for me, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and for
But took
you.
my
Yeah,
runoff spot.
absolutely. Well, politics, there's nothing certain in politics. Um, and so, uh, well, anyway, you're running for lieutenant governor. You've written this book, Weight Behind the Spirit. Let's talk about the book. It is a book on leadership, correct? And
It
you're
is.
encouraging people to get off the couch and become involved in their communities and mentoring youth. And you also talk about motivational speaking in the book.
Yeah, we're just getting back to those basics. I have a great chapter in there on leadership. There are great points straight from Coach K. So if you follow college basketball, you probably surely know who Coach Krzyzewski is, the Duke basketball coach.
Don't put me
I
on
was
the
I was a
spot.
Duke professor, and he had come to our residency program. I thought it was kind of more of a gimmick. They roped him into showing up during recruiting season, but it wasn't a gimmick. He literally gave a 2 hour leadership lecture where he just hammered home points on ownership, like in any organization, accountability. He was really big on standards and not rules. Because nobody likes the rules, but when you talk about standards, you hold yourself to a higher standard. I know in my squadron, that's how I, made sure that people know that you care, you're very genuine, spending that time, but having ownership in that organization. Everybody has ownership on his teams, whether you're a freshman or a senior or his 2008 Olympic team. You have LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, all these guys making $30 million a year. He held them all to that same standard. And then, just don't micromanage, put people in position to be successful. He had such a great leadership that he just exudes leadership. It was unbelievable.
Well, that's a great um, story in and of itself. So I've got this notion or an observation that I'd like to run by you.
Sure.
It seems to me, and I've been on this earth a while now, and I've lived through a lot of different periods in our country's evolvement. Um, but it's my sense is that the more the better educated we have become, and the more affluent our society has become in general, the crazier it has become. Am I just being negative, and am I missing something, or do you think
I
there's
think
something?
you're spot on there in that most Americans. So I've traveled the globe. I've lived overseas. I've served in different combat scenarios and seen some just horrific things that people will do to each other. Americans are very sheltered. The rest of the world is worrying about how they're going to feed their children, how are they going to prevent their family from being mass murdered, raped, just horrific crimes. Their children thrown into vehicles, set on fire, and then snipers pick off people that run out there and try to save them. I mean, just horrific, horrible, horrible things. So Americans are so sheltered. Their concerns are: do I have the newest generation iPhone, and what kind of car I drive, and how big my house is? But in real life, none of that matters. So when you're serving in combat and you're watching people die and you're carrying those body bags, you realize none of that matters. Nobody cares how big your house is. Nobody cares what kind of car you drive, and nobody cares how much money you make. Do you want to live or do you want to die? And are you there taking care of the people around you? That's all that matters. And those basics. So when you remove a lot of the fundamental worries that mankind has had to worry about in protecting their family for thousands of years now, and it comes down to iPhones and what kind of car I drive, they just kind of devolve emotionally and culturally into just some of the bizarreness that we're seeing right now in American culture. Some of these culture wars. We're moving back in the right direction. I think people have finally had enough of just the insanity, and it's been a wild few years.
Well, when I was a kid, my recollection is that a lot of people took pride, real pride, in where they attended church. My family and I went to Mulberry Methodist Church in Macon, Georgia, and my friends would say, "Oh, we go to Vineville Methodist Church," and other friends would say, "Well, we go to uh, the Baptist church, and there was discourse about which churches were better and why you went to one church over the other. And now I don't hear people talking about even going to church. I bought a lot in West Palm Beach that had been on the market for 3 years, and I asked the realtor. I kept going, and I asked myself, why has this lot not been bought in a frenzy of a real estate market? He said, I don't know. He said, I may just be because it's next door to a church, and maybe some people don't want to live next door to a church. And I said, well, I need to get closer to God. That is not a problem for me. Put an offer in on that property. So that's where my wife and I are going to be moving into our new house in about 2 months after having bought this lot. And where have we lost our way? Why is the church not a part of our fabric any longer? Not you and me, but I'm talking about as our society.
Yeah, it's that division, and I feel personally that there is a lot of purpose behind that. You know, the left and some of that when you talk about this woke ideology, the more you can separate people from actually like the fundamentals of faith and community and family, the easier it is to get people to follow these weird tangents. So, you know, the further we devolve away from faith, and for those that don't have faith, if you legitimately think that you are just king of the world and there's nothing above you and you are beholden to nothing, that kind of explains some of the weirdness that we're seeing right now. Part of having that faith and having that belief, I never would have survived Iraq without my faith. And I talk a lot about the stories with my chaplain, Jim Higgins. He's in Atlanta, actually, just outside of Atlanta, a Methodist pastor, and was our chaplain in Iraq. And I've stayed in touch with him. He came to my Assumption of Command speech in 2022 when I took command. That was very special for me. So, those types of things really help define and get you through difficult moments in your life. For me, like those combat scenarios and seeing all that death and destruction. If you don't have that faith to lean on, well, that's why you see so much anxiety and depression and suicides. I mean, that's certainly not the only explanation, but there's a large part to play with that. The further you get away from those basics, it's kind of why we're at where we're at.
My own perception is that my generation really screwed it up. I as a kid, I lived through the Vietnam War, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll was the formula of the day in the pop culture. Um, I was an awkward teenager living in Macon, Georgia, so the closest I got to that was that I drove an ice cream truck to the Macon or the middle or the Byron Pop Festival. It was the second largest. Actually, I think it was larger actually than Woodstock.
Oh
But
wow.
I drove the truck out to the venue. We'd sell ice cream popsicles, and it was a spectacle. I was 16 years old, and I had to do it on the sly. If my mother had known what I was doing, she would have killed me, I think. Certainly, my dad would have taken the keys away. But my point is that in that era, several things happened. One is the Supreme Court ruled that we could no longer pray in school. I think that was a major league setback. We started our school every day with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and a scripture reading from the Bible. The sex, drugs, and rock and roll, the abandonment of morals became the pop culture, and we just seem to have gotten and the then to me one of the final death nails was abolition of the draft. I had a high draft number. I'll be honest with you, it was not. I did not want to go to Vietnam and get shot up, but I was certainly willing to. I considered it to be my duty, but I got a high number, and the war was ended. I went off to college, and the next thing you know, the draft was abolished. And I thought that that was a good thing. I celebrated the fact that I did not have to worry about going and serving in the armed forces. My brother took a different tack. He went into ROTC and, like yourself,
Yeah.
served with distinction, and he was far more disciplined than I am. And I think our whole generation is less disciplined than our fathers and mothers were. So that's sort of the world according to John. I don't know how do we get it back?
That's something we're trying to work on. That's that book is my prescription to help address that problem, try to get this generation back in the right direction. Because yeah, I'm sure you're probably getting a lot closer than me, but I do plan on retiring, and I want to hand the keys to these kids.
Closer.
And right now they're not ready, and we need them to be ready because America will not be successful unless we can help them be successful. That's our future, and that's really why it's so important.
How's the book doing, and where do we find it?
Yeah, the book has done amazingly well. I've been very fortunate. It exceeded every expectation. It's won several awards, um, Independent Press Award, Nonfiction Writers Association, and then it did get a nod for a nomination for a Pulitzer Prize, which was amazing. I think it was just the right book at the right time, a dividing part in our
Congratulations.
nation, and this trying to bring this generation together and to teach them leadership skills and to have them be successful. I think that was a good message. They could bring people together. It's available. We've got an audiobook, an ebook, and the paperback. You can it's and you can buy it online as well at weightbehindthespear.com. So WEIGHT, weightbehindthespear.com.
Very good. Colonel Dr. Josh McConkey, a physician, a uh, soldier in the Army, and a reservist in the Air Force, an emergency room doctor, an author, and perhaps soon to be Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. Good luck in your race. We wish you well. And thank you so much for coming on The Truth today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, John. It's been a pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Yes, sir. God bless.